Hello there and welcome back to another What If video. Today we're exploring what if Qui Gon was the Grand Master in place of Yoda around the prequel timeline and how this would affect the Jedi Order. Now Qui Gon and Yoda were two very distinct characters, and although they had the link through Dooku, Yoda training Dooku and Dooku training Qui Gon, they were still very much their own individuals. Qui Gon was more in tune with the Force, similar to Yoda, however, followed the Force's will, whereas Yoda had a focus on the future, always being mindful of what can happen next. Qui Gon also seemed to not believe in free will, as everything was as the Force willed it to be. Yoda, however, strongly believed in free will and that people could change their destinies if only they believed it was possible. Qui Gon knew that the Force worked in balance, which meant after a long time of the light side being the most dominant force, the galaxy needed to experience some dark in order to get true balance. This is why Qui Gon wanted to personally train Skywalker, giving up Kenobi as his apprentice was ready to become a Jedi Knight. Yoda, however, did not share the views of Qui Gon and only gave Anakin to be trained by Kenobi after Kenobi threatened to leave the Order. Yoda also assigned Ahsoka to Anakin during the Clone Wars after not very long of Anakin having trained himself. Qui-Gon, however, I believe would have assigned Ahsoka to Kenobi, with Kenobi being ready to take on a Padawan after Anakin. Yoda amongst the Council also used Skywalker to get to Palpatine and keep tabs on the Supreme Chancellor, where Qui-Gon would have taught the political distrust, and whilst Anakin would still have feelings for Padme, perhaps he would be distanced from the Chancellor. These feelings for Padme Qui-Gon would help to control, especially his fear of losing her, as Qui-Gon himself, much like his Padawan Kenobi, both had feelings for someone whilst they were part of the Jedi Order. However, in the prequels, Anakin has to hide Padme from Yoda, never really disclosing the connection, as it could lead to him being expelled. So how does this affect our storyline? Well, Qui-Gon would not just be a father figure for Anakin, but he'd be the father figure of the whole Order, helping to solve all their personal imbalance as well as any problems across the galaxy. Now, whilst Qui-Gon is definitely not perfect and will have some issues himself, he would be much more involved than we see this prequel era Yoda. And whilst Yoda was getting old and stopped keeping Padawans for himself, Qui-Gon would still have a Padawan, as he'd be young enough to commit both to a Padawan and to the wider council. Qui-Gon would still go to fight Maul, but he would take more Jedi, especially from the council, as he would realise the threat having Maul attacked him on Tatooine. This means that they should be able to kill Maul with no casualties, as they are not reduced to a one-on-one fight, much like Qui-Gon was when he was separated from his then Padawan Kenobi. I don't see Qui-Gon accusing Ahsoka of the Jedi Temple bombing, as that is not what a Jedi does. A Jedi does not go around laying blame on people unless there is enough fact to find them guilty. This means they'd find Barriss Offee guilty much sooner than the Jedi did, and the Jedi only found her guilty in the end because of Anakin and the pressure he put on her to reveal herself. Having Anakin and Qui-Gon mostly working on this case, sorting out the distrust between the Jedi and civilians, would make for a great storyline, and they would find out just as quickly as Anakin did, as neither of them have the attachment to politics to draw this to a wider case. This would mean rather than the police of Coruscant and the Coruscant shock troopers being left to solve who bombed the Jedi would personally account for this, and of course being one of their own members would find out swiftly. There'd be no public trial whatsoever, and help would be given to Barriss to ensure her trust in the Jedi was strengthened. Qui-Gon would send reinforcements to Geonosis without clones, sending the full Jedi Order if he had to, and they may lose more Jedi, but would eventually save Kenobi and capture Dooku after more Jedi are sent to follow him, having just evacuated the arena with as many Jedi as they could save. Dooku would end up spoiling Palp's plan, especially as he really needed Qui Gon at this time. And after speaking to Qui Gon, Dooku would realise the wrong way he is acting about these beliefs, and though he would stay out of the Jedi Order, would remain closely in touch with the Council, especially with the separatist dealings that he was now against. The Jedi Council as a whole would never accept the clones, and this choice would never be given to the Senate, as the Jedi are peacekeepers and not warriors. Palpatine would be found guilty swiftly thanks to Dooku's testimony, and after killing a few more Jedi, would proceed like we have seen when Windu went to capture Palpatine. However, Qui Gon went with the full council of Jedi Masters, and as the fighting goes on, Palpatine tries convincing Anakin, who was given a seat on the council, but as Palpatine lets his guard down, trying to convince Anakin to save him, Anakin strikes, dealing the final blow. Anakin, having destroyed the Sith Lord, whom had no apprentice after losing Maul and Dooku, would leave the galaxy to balance for decades to come, and in keeping with the balance, Qui Gon would move the temple off Coruscant away from the politics of the Senate, the politics that had bent the Order for so long, and would possibly move the temple to somewhere more remote like Arcto, where they can keep a base away from civilization, making sure the balance ensures amongst the galaxy, and would begin expanding their efforts into the Outer Rim, saving planets like Kali, the homeworld of Shilao, who eventually would become General Grievous. Thank you for watching another What If video, and I have done a what if Grievous never became Grievous, so do check that out, as well as last week's that I'll leave linked on screen now. And as always, here is the thumbnail for next week's episode, which is definitely an interesting one, so be sure not to miss that. Do leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and check out the others in the What If playlist, also on screen. May the Force be with you always.